is Irena Swanson, and this is the third part in the three-part series on making rows of half-square triangles very fast and accurately using the method that I call tube piecing. Links to the other two parts appear in the description below. So here's the project. We make 16 rows like this. There's a total of 704 half-square triangles here, and everything that you see, all the seams that you see here were done with exactly 66 seams. That is very fast, and it is just one example of the power of tube piecing. For more on tube piecing, visit my webpage www.tubepiecing.com. Okay. So for this project, for the finished size 2 inches for the squares, you want to cut 16 dark and 16 light fabrics, all in cut from selvage to selvage, just one strip of each fabric at strip width 2 and 9/32 of an inch, just like in the first two parts. And you may want to review those videos. For the first 8 dark and 8 light strips, you sew them as in those two episodes. I will not go into that together, and you pre-trim. But the other 8 dark and 8 light strips get sewn together differently. So rather than scooting the strips down as in the other case, here they get scooted up. So the one on the right is scooted up. And this height here is exactly half an inch less than the strip width. So it is 1 inch plus 25/32 of an inch. Once you have your 8 dark and 8 light strips sewn together, you press them, and then you want to make an accurate cut across at 45 degrees. And I already did that on the other side of the strips. And here for comparison is what we have here, and here is the other slant from before. For both of these pre-tubes, just like in the first two episodes, you sew the two outer strips together. The seams are straight, but there will be some twisting, and then when you press the latest seam and you release the twist, you get two primary Y tubes. So this is one of the two primary Y tubes. This one was achieved from the first type, and in the other type the 45-degree angles would look the other way. Okay. Then you will cut these primary Y tubes into primary narrow tubes at tube width 2.5 inches. This one has already had a few of narrow tubes cut off, but in general you should get 10 or 11 primary narrow tubes depending on the width. I got 11 from each type, that's why I have 22 rows here. Here are examples of some of these primary narrow tubes. These two are made from the same type as in the first two episodes, and this one with the other slant from the other type. And just like before, in the first two episodes and here you match darks to darks, but you probably want to do some rotation so you don't have too many lights, too many fabrics in the same spot. You sew them together from seam to seam, matching at the edges. And then the only difference here is that when you sew two primary narrow tubes of the different types, you want to make sure that the seam allowances in one point in the other way from seam allowances in the other. That will make your sewing much easier. So for this project, you want to sew your primary narrow tubes from one primary Y tube in triples. So here, since I had 11 of them, here are 3 triples, and then I have 2 leftovers. And then you similarly do the triples from the other of the other type. And then you sew triples, you alternate the triples of different kinds, so as many of them together as you can, and then any leftovers, whatever you have, get sewn to the sides. Right. So here is all of my 22 primary narrow tubes sewn together into a primary wide tube. Okay. So I want to show you what happens to the seams. As in the first 2 episodes, because of the seams matching at edges, there's a planned 1/2-inch gap on the right side between vertices. So my white pieces of paper are covering the planned gaps, and you're starting to see rows just like this one. So the idea is to cut across through the middles of these planned gaps, and well, the first cut is on the tube, and you have to make sure that you don't cut through the back of the tube. I cut this with scissors, and so I can just eyeball through the middle. I have to start here at the edge. I start exactly where the 2 seams come together, and then I eyeball to the middle of the next gap, and then over here there's no gap here, so I just eyeball 1/4 inch below this peak here, and then I eyeball across to the next planned half-inch gap, and so on. I keep doing this, and actually I have already done that, and in fact here is, I already cut this, and it is actually only after I made this cut that I pressed the whole all seam allowances so smoothly. Okay, so now that you have this, all you have to do is cut across with scissors or with a rotary cutter until you get all these rows. Once you have these rows, you position them so that they form a pleasing pattern. You rotate them, move them around, and until you're satisfied. And once you're satisfied, then before sewing them together, make sure that in adjacent rows, in one all the seam allowances go up, and in the other one all seam allowances go down. That will make sewing so much faster. This is not the only possible way of sewing these together. Here is another sample done a little differently with fewer strips and fewer narrow tubes, but there are many other options. I hope that you enjoyed my series on making half-square triangles using tube piecing. I have used the same method for making rows for sawtooth border, pinwheels, bear spa, ocean waves, lady of the lake, and so on. And please visit www.tubepiecing.com.